On today's episode, we get to talk about the most recent signings of Jack Roslovic, Tyson Jost, and Eric Robinson to see what they can bring to the Carolina Hurricanes as we get more into free agency on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I am your host, Zach Martin. I am the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I do some AHL coverage over at the Calder Times. I am also the co-host of the Surge Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a good Friday episode for you guys to finish out the week. We are going to talk about the signings from free agency over the last few days, and we're going to talk about Jack Roslovic, the most recent signing for the Carolina Hurricanes, along with Tyson Jost and Eric Robinson, who also signed back on Monday, with all the other slew of guys that are coming back or staying with the Carolina Hurricanes. But before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So like I said, we're going to dive into what's going on with the Carolina Hurricanes and the most recent signings and stuff like that, because we talked about the defense a little while ago, start going more into the forwards and stuff like that. So we got three more that we needed to discuss. And I know that the Hurricanes have done other recent signings too, so we'll jump into all that next week. But today, we are going to start off with the most recent Carolina Hurricanes signing, and that is Jack Roslovic. On Wednesday night, it was reported by Elliot Freeman that the Carolina Hurricanes and Roslovic were going to be agreeing to a deal. No one really knew how much and how long it was going to be. And then finally, Thursday morning on July 4th, we kind of get an understanding of what the deal is looking like for the former 25th overall pick in the 2015 NHL entry draft. And Roslovic is joining the Carolina Hurricanes on a 1-year, $2.8 million deal with the cap at his 3.18%. And this is coming off, his most recent contract, where it was a 2-year, $8 million deal that he signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets back in June of 2022. So it's not a super huge drop off. You're going from $4 million to 2.8. So just a little, like 1.2 less than what he did. But I think it's a good prove it deal for Jack Roslovic, for the fact that for the type of guy he is, when he's actually on his game, he's really got some good speed. He's good at transitions. He knows how to, go on the rush, not afraid to lay the body and stuff like that too. A good two-way player. Now, he does play center, but he also does play the right wing as well. So if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, I think it's a good deal where it's the AAV works. It's not a lot. It's 1 year. You can kind of have some flexibility with what you want to do with him and the rest of the roster too. And the fact that there's a lot of centers right now in the Carolina Hurricanes you got to figure out. You got Sebastian Aho, you got Jordan Staal, Jack Drury, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. That's already 5. You're going to include Jack Roslovic, who could be your 6. So, will they put him into the center position as the right-handed shot that they've been talking about before free agency started, even before the draft, was that they wanted a right shot center? Does he have what it takes to become a center for the Hurricanes? Who really knows? It's a good possibility, but, there's also a chance that he could play right wing as well, because if you look at the Hurricanes and where they're at in terms of their right wing depth on the NHL level, all you really have is Seth Jarvis, who's an RFA who isn't signed yet, but we all know he's going to sign eventually. And then you got Jesper Fast on the right side for the third line. As of right now, those are the only two guys that are on, playing on the right side of the ice. So this could be a move where, he brings a flexibility to the Hurricanes where he can play center if need be, or he can also play right wing too. So it all just really depends on what the Hurricanes want to do in terms of that aspect. But I think overall it's a good signing for a guy that, I believe still has a good chance to prove what he's worth. We know in the playoffs he played with the New York Rangers last year. kind of tortured the Canes the last couple games of that series where he did get 3 assists. So it's one of those things where it's you kind of know what you're getting out of Jack Roslovic from what he saw, and you hope he can kind of continue it on in a system that works for him. Now, he was with the Winnipeg Jets because that's who he got drafted by. He did play only one game back in 16-17, then gradually played more games that went along. The most he played was 77 and 71 back in 18-19 and 19-20 with the Jets before he came back to Columbus, because he's actually from Columbus, Ohio, and he was actually able to play with his hometown team, the Jackets, for roughly 3.5 seasons from 2020-2021 to partway through the 23-24 season before he got dealt at the deadline to the New York Rangers. His best years as a Jacket was back in 21-22, where he had 22 goals and 45 points in 81 games, and then 22-23, 11 goals, 44 points for 77 games. And then this past year with the Jackets, 6 goals, 23 points in 40 games. And then with the Rangers in 19 regular season games, he had 3 goals and 8 assists. While in the playoffs, he did pretty well for the New York Rangers, all things considered. 2 goals, 8 assists for 16 points. He was a half point per game guy in the playoffs from the Rangers. And I think with the New York Rangers, for him, how it worked out is the fact that it was kind of like a stacked team. You're kind of adding a depth piece that, you're not really utilizing him to what he probably could be with how that roster is. And with the Columbus Blue Jackets, I mean, it's one of those things where you look at the Jackets, it's been kind of an up and down, chaotic set the last few years for them, where it's like they're trying their best to get to where they need to get going, but also it's been kind of tough for them as well. So it's one of those things where could Jack Roslovic play really well in a system like Carolina's with Brind'amour, where it seems like his style could potentially fit the team, and you got to hope that maybe he stays on and does what he needs to do to show what he made of himself to become that 25th overall draft pick by the Jets back in 2015. Looking at his development in terms of where he was as a player, I mean, he played back in the Ohio Blue Jackets U16 way back in the day as a kid, played for the USA U18 team, also played the U.S. National Development Team in the USHL, where he got 38 points. Even for the the U.S. National U18 team, he scored 27 goals, had 79 points in 65 games back in 2014-15. Even in his one season with Miami University in the NCAA back in Ohio, for the Red Hawks, 10 goals and 26 points in 36 games. So almost close to a point per game guy even then. Had played a couple years with the Manitoba Moose, had a pretty good, first season, 2016-17, 13 goals, 48 points for 65 games. So it's something where it's like you can kind of see that there is something with Jack Roslovic. Like I say, he's got the speed, he's got the stick handling, he can rush really well, he can play a two-way game. Don't really see him playing a lot of penalty kill, but I could definitely see him possibly playing in the top 9 for the Hurricanes, possibly playing as a power play 2 guy if they wanted to use someone like that in terms of how you want to maybe have a center for the second power play unit, or have someone as another option where they can try to set up some plays in front of the net. So overall, I think it's a good sign for the Hurricanes. Like I said, the AAV is not bad. It's a 1-year deal. It's a prove-it deal. And if it works out where he plays really well and the Hurricanes really like him, I could see an extension staying with the Carolina Hurricanes. It's just, how's that going to work out? But for me, I think it's a good chance for the Hurricanes to take a look at this guy because, like I said, it's one of – you play with the Jets for a little bit. It was an okay time for him there. He was part of the Patrick Laine trade that went to Columbus for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Played really well for the most part with the Columbus Blue Jackets over the time. Of course, it's a lot of up and down seasons for them for the most part. Gets traded at the deadline to the New York Rangers. Does well in the playoffs, like I said, almost a half a point per game. And you kind of see what he had like in terms of what his season was last year. Overall, it was only 9 goals, 31 points in about 59 games. So it was hurt, didn't get to play a lot last year, but for what he did for 31 points in 59 games, it's not terrible. Like I said, the playoffs weren't a bad marker for him either. So it just depends on Can you hope that he stays consistent? Does he stay on his game? And being with a team that in the last 6 years has been more of a playoff regular, deep playoff run contender every year. Is there something where the Hurricanes could unlock another level of Jack Roslovic's game, which maybe hasn't really been unlocked yet with the few seasons he was with the Jets, the 3.5 years that he was with the Columbus Blue Jackets, that part of 19 regular season games with the Rangers. So it's going to be curious to see what happens with that. I'm really excited for the signing myself. I think there's some more potential there that maybe Rod Brind'amour and his staff can figure out with Jack Roslovic. But like I said, overall, a 1-year, $2.8 million deal gives you flexibility in the top 9 for a center. That's a right shot or playing the right ring as well. So we'll see how that works out. So hopefully Jack plays really well and see what he does for the Carolina Hurricanes this upcoming season for 24-25. So now we're going to transition over to the 2 former Buffalo Sabres that kind of came on the same day with the Carolina Hurricanes in Tyson Jost and Eric Robinson. But we are going to talk about Tyson Jost first, and we'll get to him here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring them huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to a segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said at the end of segment 1, we're not going to talk about Tyson Jost and how the former 10th overall pick of the 2016 NHL entry draft is making his way down to the Carolina Hurricanes. Surprisingly, for the fact that he's only 26 years old, does play center, he is joining the Carolina Hurricanes on a $775,000 deal. And this was coming off a, contract with the Buffalo Sabres last year. Was a 1-year, $2 million deal that took up 2.4% of the cap. With the Hurricanes only taking up 0.88%. And it's very interesting to see what the Hurricanes are going to do with Tyson Jost. Like I said, we were just talking about the normal regulars with the Hurricanes center core with Aho, Kakaniemi, Kuznetsov, and all that. Tyson Jost is the center. Last year with the Buffalo Sabres, he did play 43 games, only had 3 goals and 6 points, and played a good majority of the season with, did play 25 games with the Rochester Americans in the AHL, 4 goals, 14 points in 25 games. It seems like in terms of what Tyson Jost is as a player, it's like it's kind of surprising for the fact that you look back in his career, with the Penticton V's back in the 2015-16 season in the British Columbia Hockey League. He had 42 goals, 104 points in 48 games in the regular season, and in the playoffs, 14 points in 11 games. It's one of those things where it's Tyson Jost. It's a weird thing with the fact that you're looking at a former 10th overall pick and seeing where he was, because at the University of North Dakota, he had 35 points in 33 games, 16 goals, 19 assists back in 2016-17. Started playing a lot of his hockey right away, right after North Dakota. The Colorado Avalanche brought him in, got 1 goal in 6 games. And then after that, 65 games, 70 games, he started kind of bouncing up and down, with the Colorado Avalanche going to, the San Antonio Rampage when they were their AHL affiliate. Then the next year played 8 games with the Colorado Eagles. Started getting more time with the Colorado Avalanche from 1920 through 21-22. 23 goals in 67 games back in 2019-20. 17 points in 54 games in 2021. And then Partway through the 21-22 season, he did get traded to the Minnesota Wild, where he got 6 points in 21 games. 22-23, another season where he saw more split time between the Wild and the Sabres. 12 games with Minnesota, got 3 points. Buffalo, 22 points in 59 games. And like I said, this past season, 6 points in 43 games with the Sabres. Americans, 14 in 25. So it's a weird thing when you look at Tyson Jost and what his career is. The fact that you kind of thought of, okay, he's like right now he's 26. He was a former 10th overall pick with the Colorado Avalanche. You saw that he had potential to score, but it's like, what kind of happened in terms of, you saw what he did with the Penticton V's way back when, even going back to the Pursuit of Excellence band and prep way back when as a kid, 2012, 109 points. Like I said, with Penticton, he had another season where he had 45 points and he blew up for 104. The University of North Dakota, if you want to look back that far, only in 2016-17, he had 35 points in 33 games. And then pretty much after that, it's been kind of, I wonder if it's more of a utilization of how Tyson Jost should be as a player, because it's a weird thing for him where it's like he's going to be bringing a lot of depth to the center group, and I think you're probably going to see him most likely with the Chicago Wolves more than anything else, because his contract is basically the same through the minors and through what it looks like with the NHL team as well. So I'm curious to see what the Hurricanes are going to do in terms of, is he going to be in Chicago? Is he going to be in Carolina? Is he going to use him as a depth piece? That's the one thing where it's kind of like you don't really know what you're looking at for the Carolina Hurricanes. And I think that's kind of the thing that's kind of making everyone wonder, okay, like we are getting all these guys that we're signing to, but what are they really going to do in terms of, with Jost, Robinson, stuff like that? And, Eric Tulsky even said, Tyson is a reliable forward who could play in a variety of roles. His versatility will help bolster our depth heading into next season. So from all things considered, it looks like the Hurricanes are going to probably use him whenever they need to, probably as an extra forward in the AHL team. Possibly someone they can use in Chicago, and in case something happens, they can bring him up because he's a straight up center. And it's weird when you have a former 10th overall pick. He's only 26, but you got him for under $800,000. It's like you kind of want to get excited for the pick, but it's also kind of like, okay, got him free agency. Maybe something will work out, but who really knows? It's a 1-year deal. The AAV is good. They're paying him really, not very much. A good center depth piece, but you don't really know what the Hurricanes are going to use him for, and if he's going to crack the lamp at all, or are we going to see him with Chicago most of the time? So that's a really weird kind of situation to be in if you're trying to evaluate, okay, where's the team going with? And for me, it's one of those things where I know a lot of people are curious, like, okay, why are we picking up all these centers? Like, why are these all these bottom six guys? What's going on with this? And for me, it comes down to this. The Hurricanes finally got an affiliate again, and last year they really couldn't have a whole lot of guys to put in the minors because they didn't really have an NHL affiliate. So basically all they had was their prospects and maybe other guys that they've signed to contract, but they didn't have the necessary roster to have guys like Jost, Robinson, everyone, Riley Stillman, who we're going to talk about next week, and all of that. So now the Hurricanes have that affiliate in Chicago, and now you're seeing they're sprinkling all these, I wouldn't say veterans, but guys who have experience in the AHL and the NHL who can also play. If they need them, they can bring them up and play them, and then send them back if someone gets healthy again. Use them as a healthy scratch, extra forward help. So that's kind of where it's looking like in terms of Jost and even probably Robinson, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. But that's kind of where that whole situation is with Jost. Is you get him, you get a depth center, can play power play, penalty kill, even strength, definitely a bottom 6 guy. Someone you can use in the AHL to help the other guys come along, with some of that AHL experience he had with the Rochester Americans last year, and even in his time with the Colorado Eagles and the San Antonio Rampage when he was with the Colorado Avalanche. So there's that too. So, and you can say he could come up as well, but who knows? It's honestly a good depth pickup. We'll see what comes up with Tyson Jost, but former Avalanche, former Buffalo Sabre. We actually got 3 Buffalo Sabres on the Hurricanes now. So, and then Jost, Robinson, and also Riley Stillman. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with Jost. Now, we are going to talk about Eric Robinson, what he brings to the Carolina Hurricanes as well, because he's also a former Buffalo Sabre and also former Columbus Blue Jacket as well. So a lot of connections with a lot of the guys that we're talking about today, playing on pretty much the same teams, and now they're all going to be with the Carolina Hurricanes organization. So we will talk about Robinson here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 2, we're going to be talking about Eric Robinson and what he can bring to the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the former undrafted player from Brind'amour, New Jersey, does play left wing, 29 years old, and he's a left winger he's going to be a left winger for the Hurricanes. His deal is a 1-year, $950,000 deal, which takes up only 1.08% of the cap. Now, with Robinson, he's coming off a contract where it was a 2-year, $3.2 million deal that he signed back in July 2021 with the Blue Jackets when Jarmo Kekalainen was their general manager. Now, this past season, he played 40 games with the Buffalo Sabres, 9 points, 2 goals in 40 games. And then with the Columbus Blue Jackets, he actually started the year with them, only played in 7 games, got 1 goal. And he also played with the Cleveland Monsters for 9 games in the AHL, 1 goal for 4 points. So he basically spent most of the season with the Buffalo Sabres. Of course, it was only 40 games due to injury, so it was not really a long season for Eric Robinson. I know the past season, 22-23 with the Columbus Blue Jackets, 12 goals, 24 points in 72 games. His best season actually came with the Jackets back in 21-22, where he had 67 games. 10 goals, 27 points. So overall, in terms of his career, the former, Princeton University product, his best season with, the university was in 27-18, where he had 31 points in 36 games, where he had 17 goals. And that same season, he only played in 1 game for the Blue Jackets, was 0 points, but was a +1. After that, kind of split. The next 2 seasons split time between the Cleveland Monsters and the Columbus Blue Jackets. 2018-19, he played 45 games with Cleveland, got 24 points. Then the next season played most of his time with the Blue Jackets, where he had 12 points in 50 games. Not a very long, type of where he was at with the Blue Jackets. The fact that you're talking 17-18 to 23-24. Spent a lot of time yo-yoing between Columbus and the Cleveland for a little while until he became a regular for the Blue Jackets. The 2020-21 season, got 18 points that year, and then got traded to the Buffalo Sabres partway through the 23-24 season. So not a lot of playoff experience as well. Played in 10 games, got 1 goal in the 1920 season. Other than that, it's just one of those things where you kind of know that he has some offensive capabilities. He did play with Dubuque, the Fighting Saints, in the USHL. Played 4 seasons with Princeton University in the NCAA. His best season came in his senior year. Other than that, it's been okay in terms of what Eric Robinson is for his career. Eric Tulsky said, Eric is an experienced forward who will add speed and physicality to our lineup. He has also shown that he can contribute offensively, and we are glad to have him in Carolina. So Robinson does have a 2-way game to him. He does have the speed. He can be physical. Played. It's one of those things where you look at him overall as in his career, where it's 68 AHL games with the Monsters, 33 points over his career. In terms of his NHL career as well, he's got 91 points in 306 games between the Jackets and the Sabres. You saw a lot of his, what he did with, with the Princeton Tigers, was a former captain in his senior year. It's another one of those depth signings for me for the Hurricanes where he plays left wing. You kind of see where your left wing group's already at right now. Yes, Jesperi Kotkaniemi is not really a left wing, but there's a potential he could be there next year. You got Andrei Svechnikov, you got William Carrier, you got Jordan Martin coming back. Depends what they're going to do with KK. That's going to remain to be seen. So, I think with Robinson, it's another, like Tyson Jost, maybe another healthy scratch, extra forward for the team coming up this year. I could see him being in Chicago, kind of helping out the new guys as well, because he has a little bit of AHL experience. Just another depth piece for the Hurricanes right now. Like, same thing we talked about with Tyson Jost. Someone who could come in, make it under $1 million, a one-year deal, kind of being able to add on to bodies that the team needs, because now they're not playing super short with, there are the prospects ready to go. Someone gets hurt like it was last year. Now it's kind of like, okay, you have those guys that you can, play in Chicago with the prospects and maybe need to call them up when they need to be. And guys like Scott Morrow or Bradley Nadeau, Jackson Blake, they're not going to be your first options. You can still let them be in Chicago, develop and do what you need to do. And then you can call guys like Tyson Jost, Eric Robinson up to the NHL squad as well. So that's kind of what the aspect of what the Hurricanes is the fact that with them having a AHL affiliate is going to help them. So that's kind of where I see Eric Robinson being. It's going to be that depth guy who maybe might break the lineup depending on how his training camp and preseason goes. Could be an extra, healthy scratch, extra forward like a Brendan Lemieux, who's also a left winger as well, who could also play right. So a lot of versatility with some of the bottom six guys for the Hurricanes. I overall wouldn't expect a huge season out of him, but someone who could come in when necessary to give some guys some off days. Maybe someone gets hurt, stuff like that. Like I said, it's going to be more of an extra, a 13th, 14th forward guy you can play in the AHL with Chicago, bring him up when you need to call him like that. So overall, it's a pretty solid depth signing for the Hurricanes. Nothing to get super excited about, but like I said, that's your third. That was the second. He was actually one of the first guys to get signed to the Hurricanes at the Jacob Slavin announcement. So Eric Robinson was a Hurricane pretty fast in terms of what the free agency day was on day one. It was Robinson and Jost pretty quick. So now you got two former Sabres back together again. You got the third one coming in, Riley Stillman, which we'll talk about, like I said, next week. So you got three Sabres. It seems like the running joke now is if you get a lot of former Sabres in your Stanley Cup team, you might have some good odds. So who knows? Maybe the Hurricanes are trying to tap into that Buffalo mojo of, hey, we'll just snag all these former Sabres and go win the Stanley Cup. Who knows? But overall, like I said, it's a good signing for depth pieces and stuff like that with Robinson and Jost, and see what they can do next year for the Hurricanes. But it should be very interesting. But, welcome Jack Roslovic, Tyson Jost, and Eric Robinson to the Carolina Hurricanes. Curious to see what all three of those guys can do in terms of their skill set and what they each individually can bring to the Hurricanes, either in the NHL level or with the Chicago Wolves in the AHL. But that will wrap up a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. If you want to keep everything what's going on with me and the Carolina, my coverage with the Hurricanes, you can follow me at OneTrueZach on X. You can follow the podcast at LO_Hurricanes. If you click the link in my bio, you can find all my articles and newsletters over at the Hockey Writers. You can check out all my HL stuff at the Calder Times, and you can check out the link to where you can listen and watch my other podcast, the Surgecast. And then for this show, there is a link to where you can listen to this podcast on all podcast platforms. Make sure you leave a 5-star rating and a review, because if you do, I might just rate it on the show. We're almost up to 50 ratings on the podcast side of things. On YouTube, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up button. Let me know if you liked it as well. Let me know what you think of the signings of Roslovic, Jost, and Robinson. How do you feel about that, and what do you think they could do for the Hurricanes for the 24-25 season, or maybe what they can bring individually to the team as well. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on the podcast and YouTube side of things as well, because we want to make this podcast grow and all that good stuff, because we need to make Caniacs everydayers just like you. We are over 900 subscribers, and we are slowly creeping up to 1,000, because that's the goal right now. If we get to 1,000, I might just do something special for you guys. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Friday show of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone has a great rest of their Friday and has a great weekend. And until next time, as always, Let's go, Canes.